Welcome back to the College Football Pick'em Pod. We got week 7 picks coming your way. Already week 7, crazy. Before we get into things, just want to let you guys know where you can find us. We're on Twitter at Pick'em Pod, iTunes at College Football Pick'em Pod, YouTube College Football Pick'em Pod. You can find us there. We are hosted by Canes Insight. You can check us out on their SoundCloud and on their iTunes. So lots of places to find us. Phil, what do we got before we get into things?
Before we get into things, I'd like to take a second to thank our sponsors. You know them well, Brett and everyone over at Caneswear. They've got the best selection of Miami Hurricanes gear by far. We're talking hats, we're talking jerseys, shirts you can't find anywhere else. They've got brand new Adidas apparel, plus their own custom clothing, football, baseball, basketball, and much more. You name it, they got it. So head over to caneswear.com or visit the storefront in Davie off University Drive in the Arrowhead Shopping Center. Most important thing that came out of this week, obviously, Canes take down FSU at home.
Stomped them.
Well, hey, you know what? Here's the way I look at that game. That was one of those games where that doesn't say how good Miami is. That says how bad FSU is. FSU is terrible this year. Miami only won by 1, but anytime you beat your rival, that's all that matters. First time home win since 2004. Oh, my God. So I'll take it.
I'm looking at this another way, though. I'm going with the Willie Taggart's finally got these 5-star recruits playing at the level they should have been playing the entire season. They are a much improved team over their losses to Syracuse and Virginia Tech, and their close one, their nail biter, were with Samford State or Samford.
Yeah.
So I like to think that Florida State isn't that team that we saw at the beginning of the season, and that they are getting things together, and that Miami, handled a, competent Florida State team and not the early season team. I mean, we're heading into week 7 now. These teams are not the same as week 1 or week 5 in Florida State's case when they had the Louisville game also, which we don't want to really bring that up either, but until I am proven otherwise, that is the way I am looking at that game.
And you know what? It's one of those where Perry didn't play very well, and we're going to talk Miami versus UVA later on in this podcast, but Miami didn't play very well in the first half of that game. The offense didn't play well really the entire game, but the defense stepped up when it needed to step up, and I think that's kind of my theme for this week coming up is the teams that played better defense is who I went with this week, because I think, obviously, I still have a UCF bet in here, but a lot of the teams I'm looking at, we're seeing these, like Virginia Tech hung around with Notre Dame last week for at least a half. And I know the second half they fell apart, but I think Virginia's Tech defense is pretty legit. Notre Dame just made adjustments to beat them in the second half. And so I think that Miami's defense did everything they needed to do. It wasn't the flashiest win. We only moved up 1 spot in the rankings. UF jumped us because they beat LSU, which is always infuriating and obnoxious. But I still think that, Miami, by winning that game, ensured that, they escaped their biggest trap game of the season. Now let's just make sure that none of the other games turn into trap games.
Yeah. I mean, look, we were 13.5-point favorites, and we only win by 1. You can take a lot of things away. It is funny how we, handle North Carolina and we move down in the rankings, and then we have this nail-biting win where we do look terrible and we move up. So the rankings,
it's because there's 5 good teams in college football right now. There's 5 teams, and everybody else, they drop off when you hit West Virginia. And this is no offense to West Virginia, who's undefeated, having a really good season, but the drop off after the top 5 is huge. It's huge. I mean, you can't tell me Alabama and Ohio State and Georgia, they're not the same level as West Virginia. They're so much further ahead. So the way I'm looking at it right now is there's like 5 teams competing, and I even throw Penn State in there as one of the teams that's really good.
I throw them in there as well, and we'll get to them. I'm taking Penn State this week. Should we just hop into the bet? Should we do some recap? I mean, Rutgers was back in losing. That's always exciting.
Well, I want to say the two that the one that really hurt both of us was Syracuse. That was the one that Yeah, that was the one that really hurt both of us because Syracuse should have won that game. They were up 14-0 to start that game. Pitt came back. Pitt took a lead. Syracuse got hot again, went up 7. I was like, good, this is over. I got this in the bag. And then they go to overtime, and Eric Dungy makes the worst pass of all time. Like, what was he thinking in overtime, throwing that ball up on first down? You need a touchdown to tie this team. You know you need a touchdown. And he just chucks it up as if it's fourth and a Hail Mary, and he is. That was ugly. So they lose that
it shouldn't have gone to overtime with the way we were looking at it.
It shouldn't have. And you know what, though? There was also a delay in that game, which – that was when Pitt was actually up 10, and after the delay, Syracuse came out hot. That was a really long football game, and I don't want to use that as an excuse, but when you get these games where it breaks the rhythm, they had 2 halftimes. They had halftime, they played 3 minutes of football, and then they went to halftime again. And they were out for a while. So I think the weather delay definitely played into Pitt slowing down, and then Syracuse, I feel like, just got tired at the end of the game, much like they did against Clemson. They are not ready to play 60 minutes right now, and that was a longer game.
Mm-hmm. Another one that I liked was the Notre Dame cover. Mm-hmm. That's one where I worried a little bit early, but it seemed like, Notre Dame is one of those teams you mentioned as a top 5 legit team. Yeah. They're probably at the bottom, of that, but they're looking good.
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame has been really good all season. They really have, and I hate to say that, Miami people, it's always hard to say Notre Dame is really good. But the other one I liked was the Friday night game where Utah State was underdogs against BYU, and they beat them 45-20. I mean, that wasn't even a game. I think they were up 24-7 at one point. That was an easy one. So, we had a much better week. We rebounded pretty well. Boston College, NC State, you had the +5, so you pushed on that one. We both had the over. It got so close at the end to hitting it. It just didn't. The Iowa State, Oklahoma State was probably the easiest over ever. That was
those Big 12 overs. Keep them coming. So, I got a couple lined up for this week.
Well, let's start off with the first game then, which is a Thursday night game, Texas Tech at TCU. Do you have the over in this game?
I do have the over. The over is set at 61.5. I think both of these teams score 40. TCU's defense is terrible. Texas Tech doesn't really have that much of a defense either. Both the offenses are very capable. I don't see how this doesn't clear this 61.5. I guess if one team scores like 21, but then I'd still think at least one of these teams gets 40 points. So I really don't. I'm not seeing many ways this goes under unless it's just, kind of that weeknight grogginess that there wasn't enough time to prepare. But I see that also helping the offenses, finding big plays and, missed coverage, mistakes, that sort of thing, especially with these two teams that throw the ball a lot, put up a lot of points. So I'm on this. I'm kind of leaning with your strategy this week of fewer bets, higher values. So I got $20 on this over for the Thursday night matchup.
Yeah, I ended up backing away from this one because the last time Texas Tech went on the road and whooped a Big 12 team, they won 41-17 over Oklahoma State, and that was 58. And I thought Oklahoma State would score the points because we saw them against Boise put up some points, which Boise last week was a disaster against San Diego State, which will lead into my next bet. But I don't know. I look at this game, and I want to take the over, but I am really scared that TCU actually is the one who doesn't put up enough points. I think Texas Tech probably win this game.
TCU is at home here,
yeah,
which I think helps them. They haven't looked good late. I think this is one of those games where they kind of get their feet under them a bit after a tough game against Texas. They had a tough game against Ohio State. Iowa State was last week, so I think this is especially a Texas Tech defense that will allow them to move the ball on offense.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I mean, I think this is definitely a good bet. I lean the way you're leaning. There were 10 other bets that I liked a little bit more. And the first one is San Diego State at home against Air Force. San Diego State is 11-point favorites, and I got San Diego State -11. I think this is an easy one. I think that San Diego State last week went into Boise and won. They beat them 19, just straight up beat them. 19-13. They beat Arizona State. They beat Sacramento State. They beat Eastern Michigan. They've beaten some good teams. Their only loss on the season was Stanford, and they looked really bad, but that's week 1. That's week 1. Since then, beating Boise in Boise is no joke. That's a legitimate win. They're at home. They're taking on Air Force. The reason this spread is as close as it is is because Air Force just demolished Navy last week, beat them 35-7 as 2.5-point underdogs. That's crazy. But I'm not buying Air Force. They lost 33-27 to Florida Atlantic, 42-32 to Utah State. So they've lost some games this year. I think that, yeah, they beat Navy. That's great. But I think San Diego State has found their stride here. They're a better defensive team. And that's kind of what I said early. I think that they stop Air Force from scoring. And I think that they put some points on the board. I'm really, to hold Boise to 13 points in Boise. Wow.
Yeah, no, their defense is legit. I guess my worry here is the come down. They had the big win. They're back at home against kind of a weaker opponent. And it's the, it's the weeknight. It's Friday night, a little less time to prepare. But I like where your head's at here.
Yeah, so that's one of the ones I like here. That's one of the bets I'm taking. Do you have any other ones on Friday night?
No, I thought about a couple, but like I said, I'm rolling with the Phil strategy here. Fewer bets, more money on each bet instead of just shooting the board. This week, I actually I went through the bets. I was like, oh, I like this. More of them jumped out to me than like the past 3 weeks. The last 3 weeks have been a little, like that they were trickier, and I feel good heading into this week so far. So yeah, let's move on to Saturday.
Yeah, so moving on to Saturday, I only have one 9 o'clock game. I guess I have a 9:20 game.
Oh, that's sad because it's so fun to wake up at 9 on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast now, and waiting till noon to watch football, it drives me crazy. West Coast football times are so much better for the the late Pac-12 games and the the early games. You wake up and football's on, and it's on until midnight your time. So
yeah, well, okay, so I have 9 here. I have 9:20, and 9:30. So
you'll be okay.
I have them in that slot, but I only have one 9 o'clock game, which is Oklahoma State at Kansas State. I just -7 for Oklahoma State. Give me it all day. I got 20 on that. Kansas State, I've been picking against Kansas State all year, and it's yet to bite me in the butt. So I'm just going to keep going with it. Oklahoma State lost to Iowa State last week, 42-48. They beat Kansas 48-28. Oklahoma State will give up points. But Kansas State, they scored 34 against Baylor, but they gave up 37 against Baylor. And I know that they covered against Texas, and Texas has looked really, really good. But Texas isn't winning games necessarily with their offense. I know that they did against Oklahoma because it's Oklahoma. You have to outscore Oklahoma. But their defense has been pretty solid all season. So I think that Oklahoma State, this is going to be a higher scoring game. And in a higher scoring game, to take the team that I think is much, much, much better as only a -7, so if it's touchdown, it pushes, and I think they win this game by more than a touchdown. I think they win this by double digits. I like Oklahoma State here. I know it's at Kansas State. I don't think that matters. Also, when Texas lost by 5 to Kansas State, they were looking ahead to the Oklahoma game, and they still won by 5. So
well, yeah, I mean, you're talking about the Texas-Kansas State game, right?
Yeah. Sorry if that came out.
Yeah, I mean, Texas had that thing won. They were trying to just run that clock out and get out of there as quickly as possible. That score really wasn't indicative of how easily Texas had that game.
Yeah, so I like Oklahoma State here -7. Until Kansas State couldn't beat Baylor, and I know that they scored points against Baylor, but Baylor's not a good football team. So yeah, I like this.
My worry here is that I don't really trust Oklahoma State's defense whatsoever, and Kansas State is at home, and maybe they can put something together. I do. If I had to take this game, I would agree with you, but I don't love it enough to to put a high value bet on it.
All right. Well, what is your first game then in this 9 o'clock slot?
Well, I guess I'm looking now. I don't have a true 9 o'clock.
Yeah, it's too easy. 9:20. There's an easy. I like how we're calling the 9.
We're gonna agree here. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. This is a team we've both liked all season since their first game, and this is Duke going on the road to play Georgia Tech. They're underdogs here, so I'm going to take them straight up, plus 130. I think there's great value here. Yeah, Georgia Tech beat Louisville. Louisville is terrible. I was on Georgia Tech to cover that, and they covered easily. They won by, 5 touchdowns? Like it was
66-31.
Yeah, so I think people might be, Georgia Tech's got it together. High on them. They're at home. Duke's injured a little bit. They got stomped by Virginia Tech. I'm not going to write Duke off of one game. Their defense is legit. I think they find a way to win this one. Daniel Jones is now getting back in the rhythm of things. He's talented. He can have his offense clicking. So I like to steal this game when it's straight up.
And how much you got on that?
20.
You got 20. See, I was gonna do them straight up, and then I was like, you know what? It's plus 130. I'm going to do them just plus 3 just in case. But I agree with you. I was really shocked that Georgia Tech was favored in this football game. And it's a lot because the last time we've seen each of these teams play, we saw Georgia Tech whoop Louisville. But that's like, I mean, at this point, that's like playing Savannah State. Louisville's garbage. And then you turn around and you have Duke gets smoked by Virginia Tech at home. But that was after Virginia Tech lost to Old Dominion. And Virginia Tech was humiliated. Ryan Willis comes in. You don't have much on Ryan Willis because you're probably prepping for Josh Jackson. Sutcliffe has probably had this team since they lost that game. He's probably driven them nuts. They're probably miserable. They're probably tired of listening to him. He probably has them so ready for this game. Look, everybody got to watch Georgia Tech play Louisville last week because it was on Friday Night Football. But has anybody watched Louisville other than that in the season? Because Louisville is a bad football team. I mean, Louisville is the bottom of the barrel, and they are probably the worst. If get rid of the Big Ten, they're probably, they're probably the best worst team in any of the Power 5 conference, but they are like the clear worst in the ACC, and I would say that they'd probably be the one above the worst. They're not Rutgers, they're not Kansas. That's where I'm at right now with this team. So I don't see Georgia Tech pulling this one out. Duke's got a pretty good run defense. Duke beat them last year too in this type of game, and Duke beat them like it was in the second half. Duke just ran away with it because Sutcliffe knows how to prepare for this. He's seen it so many times. Louisville could not stop it. Louisville could not stop the triple option, and Duke can, and Duke has done it in the past, and I think Duke wins this one. But I'm going to take the +3 to cover my ass here with them.
Gotcha. And you did mention Rutgers, and this is a game, unfortunately, that we had to skip over. I think people are finally wising up. At least the line is, I think it's at 25.5. Yeah. Maryland is favored by. That's just a little too many for my liking, though. If I had to take it, I would still take Maryland to cover that. So I'm kind of bummed. I can't rock Rutgers this week. I mean, it's been a good run here, but that's a boatload of points.
Yeah, I totally agree. And my next game, keeping in line with talking about Duke, Georgia Tech, my next game, Louisville at BC.
I'm with you.
BC minus 13.5, man. What am I? 2 touchdowns. BC almost came back.
BC isn't that good. And this is, again, what I've been preaching all season long is find these bad teams that are going to get blown out. I mean, yeah, it is 2 touchdowns. The team has got to, handle them, but Louisville is that bad. Yeah. They are. So I don't think BC needs to play all that well, except I think BC at some point is going to get things together. They have a very talented roster. They're at home. And this is like one of those games where you have a weaker opponent coming to you, work the kinks out, put points on the board, build confidence with your squad. I hope that's what BC aims to do here this weekend.
Yeah, and if you look at BC, I mean, they almost came back against North Carolina State last week. They ended up losing that game by 5, 28-23. Didn't have A.J. Dillon, didn't play at all. So they were down, but North Carolina State, I still don't know what to make of that team because they should have put up so many more points in that game, and they had 4 turnovers. I mean, BC's defense kept them in that game, and the offense started to click at the end. And I'm starting to think that this offense is going to click really well against this Louisville team. We saw Georgia Tech put up 66 against Louisville. We saw Florida State only win 28-24. That was a closer one. Virginia beat Louisville 27-3. These. I think that Boston College is going to be able to put some points up and run away with this game. You're at home, show the fans that everybody was so hyped about Boston College this season. Everybody was ready for Boston College. They're going to compete in the Atlantic. They're going to be the one who competes with Clemson. That's what everybody really thought. And right now they took a big step back last week by losing to North Carolina State. It makes it a lot harder to be able to get into that, into the top there, get into the ACC championship game. We'll come out with a little bit of pride and beat up on a pretty bad football team. So yeah. I got 20 on.
I got 20 on it too. I got 20 on it too. We're looking pretty similar here. So hopefully these pay off.
Yeah, seriously. Otherwise, man, that's going to look bad for us. So my next game here, I have Troy at Liberty. I don't know if
No.
yeah, okay. So I'll jump on this one. I got Troy minus 9.5. I could talk about this one real quick. I did my same strategy this week. 10 bets, $20, because I ended up going 6-4 last week, but I was close on the other ones. I was really close, and I feel like I had the right read on the games. I just, sometimes BC or North Carolina State turns the ball over twice inside their own 30. I mean, you're not going to hit an over with that. All they needed was one touchdown. But in this game here, you have Troy going to Liberty. I know that Liberty is, pretty good, but Liberty just lost to New Mexico State. New Mexico State's a bad football team. Liberty was favored against New Mexico State. They lost by 8. They lost to North Texas by 40. They lost to Army by 24. Troy had Troy's been winning. Troy's just been beating teams down. They beat Georgia State this week by 17, which was a push. They ended up beating Coastal Carolina by 24. They beat Louisiana Monroe. They've beaten Nebraska, Florida A&M. They're blowing teams out. I know that they got killed by Boise, but I like where this Troy team is at. Minus 9.5. I just don't see Liberty scoring with Troy. I mean, what Troy did to Georgia State is they just kept every time Georgia State looked like they had any type of life, Troy just put points on the board. And Georgia State could never get closer than 10. And I think there was one point where it was at 24. I was pretty confident in this one. I think I had it at 16.5 when we went live on the podcast. So I was able to end up getting them to Troy ended up covering it. But either way, I really like Troy this week, minus 9.5 at Liberty.
Yeah, but you really like North Texas as well. What was that, last week or the week before?
It was the week before. It was my bad week, but I really liked a lot of teams that week, and I was a disaster.
I see where you're going with this. I have not had as much time to watch some of these, lower matchups, if you will. These, not as prime time events. So I'm going to let you take these games because I haven't. And if I can't watch the teams, I don't feel confident in betting. But you make some good points. I've seen Troy play a handful of times, and I am with you that they do look pretty good. So
yeah, they do. I mean, they look legit. One game that we didn't talk about here, or I don't know, maybe you have something on it, or would be the next one up. Georgia at LSU. Do you have anything on this game?
I do not. With terrifying. The way the SEC is looking, it's like they just keep beating each other. You don't really know if they're all good. You don't know if they're all bad. Auburn lost to Mississippi State, and that was kind of our bearing with other Power 5 conferences because they played Washington. It's anyone's game right now in the SEC. This should be a good game. LSU is at home. I'm not really touching this. I do have a game before it though, because Pittsburgh is headed to Notre Dame. Do you have anything on this?
I don't.
Okay. So I'm a big fan of this Notre Dame team this season, but they play Pitt often, not every year, but they play kind of a quasi ACC schedule. So these teams meet a lot, and the games are rarely blowouts. I mean, This is kind of where Notre Dame lets their guard down. It's at 21 points right now. That seems to be way too many. I think Pitt covers this pretty easily, actually. So, again, I think this Notre Dame team is different, but are they that different that they're going to come out and just stomp Pitt? They could. So I only have $10 on this one, but I do want to get some action because I think that's, for not a rivalry game, but for two teams that know each other well and that have played each other close in the past. That's something I want to get on. So only $10, but wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I can't figure out with Pitt. I'm all over the place on that team.
Pitt kind of plays up to the games that it's in. They're not that great of a team, but they kind of, arise to the occasion.
Yeah.
And this is Notre Dame right now is like a top 5 team. So this is a big game for Pitt. They know they'll be on the national stage. Notre Dame gets a lot of eyes. So I can see this game being pretty close.
Yeah, I would probably lean the way you're leaning, but still 3 touchdowns. If maybe that was like up towards 25, I might have jumped on Pitt. But at 21, I'm not sure. Just going back to that LSU Georgia game real quick. If I had to pick, this is at minus 7.5 Georgia. So if I had to pick, I would say I'm leaning Georgia, even though it's at LSU.
I'm with you.
Because LSU lost last week at Florida. It was a closer game than the 27-19 suggests. They had it. They took the lead. Florida came down, took the lead, and then LSU, I think, threw a pick 6 or something like that to go down 27-19. But I am thinking that this is what I was talking about. There's 5 really, really good football teams this year, and then there's a huge, huge, huge drop off. And I think those 5 teams are Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is in there for sure. I think it's Penn State, and I think it's Georgia. I don't even have I don't even think I have Clemson in there. You know, those are my 5. I have Clemson like just outside of that. So yeah, I think that is where we're sitting right now. So I think that Georgia's that much better than LSU. I think that LSU's offense can have a little bit of trouble scoring against them. So I do like Georgia. If I had to pick it, I'm not going to, but that's what I would lean. Will, what's the next game you have? Do you have the Washington Oregon game?
We should talk about the Washington Oregon game. This is another one where I can see this going either way. I would want to take Oregon here because they're at home. I think they're super tough. I love their quarterback. Are you on this game?
I am. I actually am. Plus 3.5.
I didn't, I wasn't confident enough to take the Ducks here. That's where I would completely lean. But, Washington's a great football team. I think people have kind of been sleeping on them since their week 1 loss. They've looked pretty good. They haven't really, had a misstep as a lot of people have predicted. So they could go into the Oregon, handle business if they slow the game down and play at their speed. This could be, a 10-point victory for Washington. So I am a little, I'm a little bit uneasy on this one.
Yeah, I like Oregon because they're at home, 3.5. I love the play of, what is his? I need to start. Herbert, thank you. I'm so bad with the Pac-12 quarterbacks. I can't remember their names. But I like the way he's playing. And you got to remember, they're one implosion away from being undefeated and probably being like number 12 or number 11 in the country right now. They really imploded in that game. They threw that one away. They should have beaten Stanford. They completely fell apart. They learned their lesson from that one. They came out and beat Cal real bad. They beat them by 18. I think that they really have a chance to win this one. If I was, last week I did a little mini upset. I actually have a different upset this week that I'm not going to put money on, but I think that you should maybe be looking at. But this is one. I got Oregon plus 3.5. I do think Oregon can win this game. I think that their offense can outscore Washington, and I think their defense is just good enough, and that Washington's offense is prone to make enough mistakes. Oregon at home, I think that this is guys, we blew it once against a number 7 team in the country. We can't blow it again against another number 7 team in the country. This is their last chance to really prove anything. The rest of their schedule is Cupcake City, Washington State, Arizona, UCLA, Utah, Arizona State's a little bit better, and then Oregon State. That's the rest of their season. They got to pull this one out if they want any chance to go anywhere. So I really like them to possibly win this game, but I like the plus 3.5.
Yeah. Hey, it could happen. I wouldn't be surprised either way. And that's why I'm staying away from it.
Yeah. I hear you.
I am on the next game here. Michigan State visiting Penn State. Mm-hmm. Penn State's a lot like UCF in that if they are the better team, they blow them out. They make it known. They make it clear. They're not afraid to run up the score. So, and again, Michigan State, they haven't done much this season. They lost to Northwestern last week. Northwestern used to be one of those bad teams I would consider. I would say I'm going to bet against Northwestern as much as I can if there's value because they're just not a good team. Well, that's a team that Michigan State just lost to. So Michigan State's on the road. Penn State's going to handle them. It's only at 13.5 right now. So I see Penn State covering this pretty easily. I got $20 on it.
Yeah, I like this bet. I don't have anything on it, but I do like where your head's at. I'm just scared because the Big Ten game, this turns into somehow like a little brawl. Somehow this turns into a lower scoring affair than Penn State wants it to be. Maybe Michigan State scores some points early, but I do hear what you're saying. Penn State is much better than Michigan State.
Yeah, but remember like the Pitt Penn State game, like that was kind of a brawl.
Yeah,
and that's kind of a rivalry there. But I mean, they end up winning. Like what was it, like 60-6 or like 50?
Yeah, it was 51-6.
51-6. I mean, it was like it was. I mean, once Penn State gets it together, they blow you out of the water. So yeah, it could be close in the first half, but I don't see Michigan State winning this game.
No.
And if Penn State's going to win, I mean, I just don't see that battle, that brawl. Maybe for a half, but not for the entirety of the game.
Well, and Penn State's coming off a bye, and their last game was the terrible fourth quarter against Ohio State where they blew it. Right. So they've had 2 weeks to think about that and sit with that. I think you're right. They're going to want to come out and whoop them. I just worry maybe a little
Especially
sluggish.
You get you have 2 touchdowns covers here. because it's at 13.5. So you gotta like that.
No, I do. I think that's a really good bet. I would definitely, if I was going to bet on this one, that would be the way I was leaning.
All right. I'm also, all right. You good with that game?
Yeah, I'm done with that one. So go ahead.
Because we can move to Baylor visiting Texas. I don't have anything on the spread, but I got $20 on the over. It's at 60.5 right now, which I think is extremely low. Because I know Texas defense is good, but Baylor will find ways to score. They play at a fast
Their defense
pace.
is terrible too,
and that's the thing.
Yeah,
Baylor's defense is worse than Oklahoma's defense, and Texas just put up 48 points last week. So if Texas can get in the 40s, I imagine Baylor to get in the 20s somewhere. So I think 60.5 is very low. I really like this one.
Yeah, I think that's a smart bet there too. I was looking at that Kansas State Texas game, and that's kind of what scared me away from this. Baylor's obviously better offensively than Kansas State, but it was 30.
Texas was on the road. They just wanted. Yeah, they're at home here. I think they're going to be fired up. I mean, Texas is a legit contender to win the Big 12, and I think they realize that they are part of the bigger picture in the national conversation.
They are,
and blowing teams out. It's not like it's meaningless. It's not just running up the score. And that people look at that. People look at final scores. People look at how badly you beat teams. That is a factor in the actual playoff decision. So I think any chance they get to put on a show, especially in front of their home crowd, they'll do it. And again, Baylor's defense is terrible, so I don't think there will be that much in their way.
Yeah, and so we have the 7, 8, 9, and 10 team all playing at 12:30 or 3:30 Eastern on Saturday with Washington, Penn State, Texas, and UCF. So all three of those teams, I mean, Washington obviously has the biggest statement to make going to Oregon to win that one. But all four of those teams are going to be looking to be the one who puts on the best show at that time. They really are. I mean, they have to be thinking about that. You have to be thinking, okay, Penn State, you're playing Michigan State. If you want to get back in that conversation after losing Ohio State, you got to beat that team bad. Texas, if you want to keep going and building that card, you got to beat that team bad. UCF, you got to beat. This is UCF's biggest opponent. You got to beat this team bad. So, yeah, I think that all four of those games being at the same time is a very interesting slot of college football this weekend.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. Are you ready to move to that UCF game against?
Absolutely. I have the best stat, and I got UCF minus 4.5 here. I got 20 on it. Love UCF.
Same here.
And here's the stat of all stats. UCF has won at least 10 straight games. I was looking at OddsShark and it said 10 straight. 9 straight times that they've won, they have won by at least a touchdown. At least a touchdown. And you're going to tell me that this is the most even matchup between these two teams? No way. UCF is so much better than Memphis this year. Memphis is flat out bad. Memphis lost to Tulane. I think that Memphis has had a couple glimmers of hope here and there.
Lost to Navy.
Lost to Navy 22-21. Remember, Navy lost to Air Force 35-7.
They blew out UConn last week, and I was actually on UConn to cover the 35 points because that was just an insane spread. And Memphis does cover to their credit. I don't think Memphis is a bad team, but
UConn is.
Yeah, UConn certainly is. I don't think Memphis is even you don't put them even close to UCF if you're ranking these teams. 4.5, I think a lot of that has to do with Memphis being at home. UCF is 4-1 against the spread this season. I think we've been on UCF the last 3 or 4 weeks. It feels like they had one of their games canceled that we also had them. So I'm going to keep riding these. I mean, they're our most successful team. We keep picking them to cover large spreads than they do, and now the spread is at 4.5. I mean, what's this? Like, why is this going to be any harder?
Yeah, and the thing is, the only game that they didn't cover was South Carolina State. They were 52-point favorites. Like, sorry they didn't cover. They won 38-0. It doesn't get much more dominant than that. They just stopped playing football. Florida Atlantic's going to beat UCF. They beat Florida Atlantic by 20. Pitt's going to put up a good fight. They beat Pitt by 31. SMU, I don't think anybody was really saying anything about that one. But I look at this Memphis team, and I just don't see 4.5 is crazy. I mean, yeah, they beat Mercer, they beat Georgia State, they beat South Alabama, they beat all those teams bad. They play a semi-decent team in Tulane, and they lose by 16. And they were 14.5-point favorites. They beat UConn, but UConn's probably, bottom 5 team in college football right now. Yeah, they beat UConn 55-14. Congrats. UCF beat UConn 56-17 week 1. So I'm all in on UCF. This is, there's been better matchups between UCF and Memphis than this season. Last year in the AAC championship game, all of that. But they still managed to win that by a touchdown. Why would this time be any different? I just can't imagine being UCF's going to outscore Memphis. They're going to put points on the board. I wouldn't be surprised if they go up 21-0 and end up winning this game by 20 plus points.
And I think this is UCF's first ever top 10 ranking. Did they finish in the top 10 last year even?
I don't believe they
might have
finished. I have to look
because they beat Auburn in their bowl game. And they just at the end of season rankings, but I don't think during a season they've ever been this high. I mean, this is the year, especially because you're saying there aren't that many good teams. We've seen, Pac-12 doesn't look like they're going to have a representative. Oklahoma just lost in the Big 12. Ohio State can easily trip up here. Notre Dame is looking good. That's a little bit scary. Clemson doesn't look all that good. I mean, they're figuring things out. I mean, they had a huge win last weekend, but this is their year. Like they're on this winning streak. They've cracked the top 10 finally getting some recognition. Like if they want to really make this thing happen, again, college football playoff conversation. We're heading into week 7. The first rankings are released after week 8. This is the time. So I expect them to win by 2 touchdowns.
And especially because of everything that went on with last year and all of the hype around this, and they beat Auburn in the national championship, and how in the public eye this is. If there was ever a time to do it, UCF, go undefeated this season, and there's a fantastic chance you're going to find yourself in that top 4 because of there's like public outrage over this.
They even claimed the national title.
Yeah, and they had every right because in that one ranking they were number 1. It's crazy. It's crazy. So they are in the spotlight right now. This is the time to do it. People want to doubt them against Memphis. Like I said, they're playing at 3:30, same time as the 7, 8, and 9 team in the country. They want to show that, they're all going to beat their team, but we're going to beat our team too, and we're going to do it on the road. Everybody else gets to do it at home. I know Washington is going on the road, but everybody else is getting to do it. Maybe in a bigger situation, but they're ready to go. I really do, and I think so far this UCF team has not shown me anything that would make me say, "Oh, I don't trust UCF." Every time they've stepped on the field, and I've watched like all their games, I've just said, "Okay."
Yeah, they look good. They've looked really, really good.
Yeah.
They're fun to watch. That'll be good. All right, let's move to another 3:30 game, or 12:30 if you're out west. We have Texas A&M visiting South Carolina. And Texas A&M is only favored by 2 points here. I like the Aggies a lot. Give me $20 on this. Texas A&M's only 2 losses are against Clemson and Alabama. So they could be like a top 10 or maybe top 15 team in the country.
This year's Auburn.
Yeah. Like they lose early to great teams and they win out. And it's like, oh, suddenly they're number 6 in the country. And, they have a shot at the thing. South Carolina hasn't looked all that good. Didn't look that great against Missouri, even though they got the win last week. They had the loss to Kentucky. They're competent, but I think Texas A&M is actually just a good team. They're just a better all around program right now. So, and I think they just have more to play for. So,
yeah, I hear what you're saying, and South Carolina's been up and down. I do agree with you that Texas A&M's a good bet here. I'm avoiding it because I want to watch Texas A&M play against just some of these teams too, and see how they do. I mean, I'm not completely sold on them yet, but you're right. They lost by 2 to Clemson. They were 2-point conversion away from beating Clemson,
and they only lost to Alabama by 21, and that's pretty good.
That's pretty good. I was going to say that's like a fantastic performance. Like congratulations. Yeah. So yeah, I hear what you're saying there. The next game I want to talk about, I don't have anything on it, but I think that this is one that everybody should really keep an eye on. West Virginia at Iowa State. I honestly believe Iowa State can win this football game. I really do think that they can win this football game. West Virginia had a pretty weak showing against Kansas last week. They beat Texas Tech by 8. I know they whooped Kansas State, but everybody's heard what I think about Kansas State. Iowa State's been playing teams tough. They lost by 3 to TCU. They beat Oklahoma State by 6. They beat Akron by 13. They lost to Oklahoma by 10 and Iowa by 10. Like, think about their 3 losses: TCU, Oklahoma, Iowa. Iowa was their first game of the season. I really think that they can keep this game close. They can kind of slow down the West Virginia offense. West Virginia hasn't looked like the same team. They looked great against Kansas State. They didn't look great against Tech, and they didn't look great against Kansas. So I think that it's -6.5 for West Virginia. I haven't seen Iowa State do enough, but if you're looking for an underdog this week that maybe you can throw $10 on at like a +3, like, plus 250, something like that. This might be
the money line. It's +250.
I believe it's at +250. This is a game that I would keep an eye on. This is really one that I would keep an eye on. West Virginia at Iowa State. I'm not going out there and doing it here, but this is one where if I had to pick, I would definitely go Iowa State. And I think that this is an upset alert. If I was doing that ESPN, they do their college game day, upset alert of the week. Everybody picks one that has to be I think it's like a 5-point underdog or more. This would probably be mine.
I wish Duke would be a 5-point underdog.
I know. I wish, man. I wish. People are really hard on that team because of who they just lost to. But all right, before we get into the next game, because it's it's the game, I have to tell you about our friends at Sala, Astorita, and Cox LLC, a boutique law firm focusing on white-collar criminal defense and security matters. They've been featured and recognized in Florida Super Lawyers, as well as Florida Legal Elite, and the partners formerly worked in the U.S. Attorney General's office and the SEC. Sal, Astorita, and Cox, attorneys at law. You can visit their website at sallaw.com or call their toll-free number 1-888-SEC-ATTY. Miami at Virginia, Will. What do you got? What do you like? What do you think?
It stayed away from the spread last week, thank God. Even though I was leaning Miami to cover that.
Yeah.
But I'm staying away from the spread again, just because we've seen this Mark Richt Miami team. Now they love playing close games, and they'll pull them out. They'll win, but I don't know. It's like you're going on the road to play Virginia. You had the big comeback win against Florida State. There's definitely a potential for a letdown here, and I can't take that. What is it? 6 points right now? 6.5.
6.5. I love it. I love it.
I mean, if I was going to take it, I would take Miami because I don't think Virginia is all that good. But this is just a spot where you worry a little bit because it is this team. If you want to talk spread, go for it. I am on this over-under.
What do you got on the over-under? And then I'll throw my spread comments out there.
So of Miami's 6 games this season, 5 of them have gone over. So the only one that didn't go over was the 31-17 win against FIU, which, Miami pretty much had the entire – not the entire game, but –
no, they did. They were up 31-0.
Yeah. Oh, right. They were what game?
Toledo's who you're thinking.
Toledo. Okay,
Toledo's who you're thinking of.
Because that Toledo game, I remember there was like a touchdown in the second half where you kind of scratch your head going, do we have this in the bag? Right. Yeah. That was where FIU scored 17 points in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So again, that's why I don't like this spread, because what if Miami is up 14 and then you just
give up a touchdown and they win by 7.
Touchdown and field. What about a touchdown and field goal?
No, because Virginia wouldn't go for a field goal if they're down 14 that late.
What if they score 17 in Miami
and win? Well, then you know what? We got other problems in Miami than just them not covering against.
Hey man, like I said at the start of this, I'm all on this narrative that Florida State is getting it together. They have talent. Willie Taggart is feeling things out and getting that team playing better. I am rolling with that, but there is a chance that Florida State is just terrible and that we aren't all that much better than a terrible Florida State team. I worry a little bit. But I do like the over here just because, man, as good of a defense as Miami has, they give up the big play, they give up points. This hasn't been just a lockdown defense by any stretch. And their offense should have their way against Virginia Tech. They should. So it's at 48.5 right now. I think that's pretty low. I think Miami goes into the 30s at least, probably into the 40s, I would imagine. So, and yeah, like I said, Miami's defense is a great defense. They give up plays, they give up points. So I like Miami to win this, but 48.5 seems pretty low. So give me the over.
Yeah, I think 48.5 could be low, but I also don't really trust Virginia's offense. What did you have on it? You have 10, 20, 15?
I got 15 on it.
15. So here's the thing. All right, Florida State versus Miami. I'm asking this quite seriously. What year did Florida State win the national championship?
What was that, 2014? 13?
It was 2014, right? Wasn't it? It was.
With Jameis? Yeah.
And it was Jameis, Cook. They had a great football team that year, right? So, they had a great football team. They go out there, they win the national championship. You know what they beat Miami by that year? And I'm so sorry
Was
that
it
if
one
no, this by 4 points.
4 points. I remember. I think was I at that game? I think I was at that game.
Was that the year that they won the national championship? Oh gosh, now I might be wrong. But either way, one of the years when Florida State was amazing with Jameis, they only beat Miami by 4. It was in Miami. This is a game where Miami lost by 4 points to Florida State. Florida State versus Miami, I will never look at that game and say that tells you anything about either football team because they're rivals. It's like one of the best rivalries in all of sports. And because of that, you had to expect Florida State to come out and play as hard as they did. Also, Florida State's offense did nothing in the second half. They had a punt return for a touchdown, and that was it. That game could have been a lot worse. Yes, N'Kosi Perry has to get it under control, but the moment got to him. Now he's gotten through that. He's not going to feel like he's in that moment against Virginia. Like, that's just not going to happen. Bryce Perkins has been pretty good this season, but I think Miami bodes well against this Virginia offense. Virginia's offense, Bryce Perkins likes to run around a lot. Bryce Perkins doesn't really turn the ball over. But if Bryce Perkins does turn the ball over, this game is over because Virginia just doesn't have the weapons to make a comeback. They lost 35-21 in North Carolina State. They lost 20-16 in Indiana in that game that we watched, which was like a ridiculous football game. But I just don't think that they have enough weapons. They are coming off the bye, so maybe they'll be a little bit pumped up. This is one of the biggest games they're going to have this season, especially since the Coastal doesn't have anybody else ranked right now other than Miami. So I think that it could be something, but Miami is definitely better than this team by 7 points. They're better than them by 7 points. So if I can get it 6.5, Miami wins this game by a touchdown. They just do. I mean, this is also another team, like Miami doesn't normally have trouble with Virginia. They really don't.
Georgia Tech.
Yeah, they beat Virginia last year 44-28. The year before that, they beat them 34-14. So they never really have trouble with this team.
Gosh, 34-14. You just scared me.
Yeah, that's true. That goes under. So I'm not too nervous about this one. I'm really not. I think that, if they beat them by 16 last year, they were 19.5-point favorites. They beat them by 16. I think that Miami goes in there. I mean, the year before that, they went on the road and won by 20 against Virginia. Year before that, they won.
You're right. You're right. I just worry this Florida State team has been.
No, Florida State is flat out terrible. You're right. No,
has been so bad this season,
and
for us to even go down 20 points, it's not like I get it's a rivalry. I get it. And I want to I'm with you here. I'm not confident enough in this pick, and I might put some real cash on Miami to cover, but it's. I don't know. I don't love it. This isn't a pick I can say I feel great about.
I love it.
And I'm only picking 11 games this week, so I feel much better about all 11 of these other bets. I might put just put out my heart on the line, some bias money out when the game comes on, but I don't feel like saying this is a good play.
There were 5 bets that jumped out to me, 5 lines that jumped out to me this week. One was Duke. That was a blatant one. Oklahoma State, Kansas State, that jumped out at me. This one jumped out at me, and then 2 more that I still have to talk about. UCF jumped out at you. Yeah, UCF jumped out.
That's the lock of the week.
I had 5, and then there was a 6th one that came up later on, which I have to talk about. But no, I had 5 that jumped out to me right away, and Miami was one of them. 6.5, man. I know you're going on the road. I know we just looked ugly against Florida State. That's why it's 6.5, because we looked ugly against Florida State. And you know what, though? I sat there and I watched that game, and I really never felt like we were going to lose. I just kept saying to myself, they're going to find a way to win this because Florida State is that bad of a football team. Florida State is that bad. And yes, is Virginia a better football team than Florida State? Absolutely. But Virginia versus Miami does not carry nearly as much weight as Florida State versus Miami. That was N'Kosi Perry's biggest game of his career, and he was terrified, and it showed. He went 13 of 32. That is bad. But I think he calms down this week. He says to himself, we got out of there. We won it. He was dancing at the end of the Florida State game. I think he dances on into this game against UVA, and I think they handle Virginia. I really do. I think they put Virginia away.
All right, man. I hope to see it.
I know you do.
What do we got next?
I got VT at UNC.
I'm on this as well.
VT minus 5.5. You've got to be kidding me.
Absolute lock. Lock it up.
Yeah, $20 VT minus 5.5. I just, oh my God. Did people like, okay, I get that Virginia Tech lost to Old Dominion. Sure. Bad loss. Horrible. I get that they, the score looks bad in that Notre Dame game, but in the first half, stride for stride with Notre Dame. I'm banned. It was a pounded out football game. It was a fun game to watch in the first half. Second half was terrible, which my sister goes to VT, so haha, glad it sucked. But, you sit here and you watch this game and you're like, okay, they have talent on that team. Brian Kelly just made the right adjustments at halftime, and Virginia Tech didn't, because Virginia Tech honestly didn't have to make too many adjustments. They were playing the right style of football. If Ryan Willis doesn't, was it a pick six or a fumble recovery for a touchdown, whichever one it was, and then Virginia Tech still came down and scored it after that anyway to make it a 17-16 game going to half. If Ryan Willis doesn't make that turnover, Virginia Tech's going into half up. And I think Virginia Tech, since that Old Dominion loss, they beat Duke at Duke by 17. You're going to tell me that North Carolina is going to play Virginia Tech closer than Duke did? Get out of here.
Yeah,
there's no way.
You've been, most of your points so far, and not that you're wrong, but has been about Virginia Tech. They're playing UNC. That's really where I know you were. I wanted to get there before you, just because again, this is the law. I got to name it, like the law of bad teams.
Yeah.
It's just UNC is garbage. And you could probably say that we made a similar claim last week with Syracuse and Pitt. I feel even better about this one. Much better than I did about Syracuse and Pitt, because I never fully trusted Syracuse, and I don't really fully trust Virginia Tech, but UNC, See,
I do fully trust Virginia Tech. I honestly do.
Well, I don't fully trust, but I trust them more than Syracuse. Syracuse was a team that was, undefeated, and then they played Clemson and, lost a close game. Okay, let's see how good they are. Virginia Tech's already had their, big upset loss. They, have, like you said, they have a lot of good players. They have a lot of talent. There's no reason why. 5.5. I probably would have taken this thing at
10.5.
Yeah, like closer to 10, and I still would have liked it. So, yeah, I'm with you, and it's mainly because of how bad UNC is.
Yeah, and you got to think too. Since Ryan Willis has been back, they beat Duke bad. They beat Daniel Jones and Duke in Duke. They beat them 31-14. That was a dominant performance. They played a good first half against Notre Dame, ran out of steam against a better football team. Syracuse had the letdown factor against Pitt, and it was a wacky game, delays and all that. Virginia Tech doesn't have the letdown factor right now. Like, there's no reason for them to be let down against UNC. And I get UNC has had time off because their last game was the 47-10 walloping against Miami. But if you watch that football game, it doesn't matter who's starting at quarterback for UNC, whether it be Surratt or Nathan Elliott. Neither one of them is putting up more than 2 touchdowns against this Virginia Tech defense. Virginia Tech's defense is pretty good, and neither one is putting up more than 2 touchdowns against Virginia Tech's defense. Surratt was horrible against Miami, 3 interceptions. One of them, I keep saying Eric Dungy made a really bad throw. The pass by Surratt that turned into a defensive touchdown for Miami was the worst throw I think I've ever seen in the history of sports.
It was terrible.
It was horrible. Horrible.
Their offense
I love
has serious issues.
Serious. So this is like you always say. You say as the games get higher scoring, the better team pulls away. This is one where, the over-under right now is set at it's at 57.5. I would not touch that. No, go anywhere near that.
Maybe
because
you go over just in hopes that Virginia Tech gets some quick scores on defense.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's what could happen. Remember, Miami won 47-10 and so that it wouldn't have gone over, and Miami's offense didn't do anything that game. They didn't have to do anything. And I look at this game as UNC scored 10 points against Miami. Their first drive looked so good. They got 3 points. They had another drive later, whatever, that ended up scoring. They had 2 drives in that football game that looked good. Everything else in that game, there was never even a question that Miami was not going to give up points to them. I feel like that's exactly how this game goes against Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech wins this one. Easy. I can't believe this is 5. I would have taken this if it was close to 2 touchdowns.
So what are you liking better as the lock of the week? Is it Virginia Tech at UNC, or is it UCF at Memphis?
UCF at Memphis. UCF at Memphis. UCF is just a better football team.
Yeah.
UCF is better.
Cool.
UCF's too good.
I'm with you.
So another game we should probably talk about. I don't know if you have any action on it. Wisconsin at Michigan. I don't have anything on this. Do you have anything on this?
Dude, the Big Ten is such a mess right now. I
know.
can't get a read here. I mean, Northwestern is terrible, but then they take Michigan to a close game and then beat Michigan State. Michigan plays teams close, and then sometimes they just blow teams out of the water. Wisconsin loses to BYU, but has
awful.
Yeah, who is just a terrible team right now, is in shambles. So the Big Ten is just confusing. I don't want to touch this one.
Yeah, and you know what? It's like one of those Michigan's -8.5. I don't have anything on this, but Michigan's -8.5 because they beat Maryland by 21 last week. But who has been more inconsistent than Maryland?
Yeah, I don't. It's like, what's the play on that? I don't have any.
I don't even have a lean. I would probably. I mean, because Wisconsin beat Nebraska, they beat Iowa. That loss to BYU is a horrible loss. If I had to lean, I would say take Wisconsin and the points. This is going to be a Big Ten brawl.
Yeah,
two defensive teams.
I lean that way as well. I just can't figure out the. I mean, even last week when I took Notre Dame, I was like, this is the wrong play from like a gambling betting perspective when you're looking at trends of the teams and all these other factors. But I was like, Notre Dame's just a better. I don't know who's a better team with Wisconsin. I can't even tell you Michigan should be favored by 8 points. So it's tough to make a play when I don't even understand.
I think in this game, you just take the underdog. This is all based on Michigan looking really good.
Yeah. You take the points when you can.
Yeah, 8.5 too. That's a touchdown, man.
God, Michigan has been screwing me. I've taken them the past 2 weeks. I had them to cover against Northwestern. They don't. And then I picked Maryland to cover against Michigan, and then Maryland doesn't cover. So I don't want to touch Michigan right now.
I hear you. So I only have one bet left.
Me too. I think it's going to be the same one.
Is it Hawaii?
Oh no, I have the Buffs. The Buffs are 7-point underdogs.
Yeah, I know.
On the road against USC, I like the Buffs here. I like the Buffs to at least cover. I got 15 on this. USC is looking better, but Buffs are undefeated. I mean, they could go in there and get the win outright, but I will stay safe and take the 7 points.
Yeah, I was surprised to see USC favored here. Like, what USC team are they
and by a
watching?
Touchdown.
What USC team are they watching that we aren't watching? I have a different game than you.
Like minus,
good bet.
If it was -3, -5, I get. But this is a full 7 right here. I think that's just too high. So.
Yeah, and USC only beat Arizona by 4 last 2 weeks ago, I guess now. And they beat Washington State by 3. They haven't looked good. And so for them to be favored over a Colorado team that beat Arizona State by 7, beat UCLA really bad, I'm really surprised that this is only 7 points. And you know what? I said the Iowa State game, but maybe this is the one where you turn and you say, hey, Colorado's going to win this game. Colorado's going to put points up. Can USC score?
Dude, I don't know.
Yeah.
And the thing with USC, it scares you a little bit just because, like, their loss is they have the Texas loss. And it's like all of a sudden Texas is really good. They lost to Stanford, but, that was early in the season. They only put up 3 points. I don't know. I wish I could just say Colorado's going to win this thing outright and take the money line, but I'm going to stay safe with the points. I do think Colorado at least covers. You know what, dude? And I'm gonna jinx both of us. I'm gonna jump on this one with you. I'm gonna do 10 on it, Colorado +7. I'm gonna jump on it. I think that this is a good bet. This is one of those teams. I didn't miss this line, but I think I just kind of ignored this line for some reason. I think I honestly thought Colorado was favored by 7. So that's why I was like, I'm not touching that one. But for Colorado to be 7-point dogs to a team that has not proven themselves to do anything, I don't get that. So I agree with you. I think that's a good bet. So I'll do 10 on that. But here's the one I really like. And this jumped out to me originally, and it's gone down a lot with Hawaii. It originally was 15 points that Hawaii was dogs. And I was so pumped. Got that in real life, not in time for the bet. But, you get that. You look at that in real life, you got 15 points. 15 points. It's 2 touchdowns. BYU can't score points. BYU can't play offense. Now, last week, I know Hawaii had a hard time with Wyoming. They ended up winning the game, but they had a hard time with Wyoming. Cole McDonald didn't play. Cole McDonald, originally, they weren't sure if he was going to be able to go. Something came out today that Cole McDonald is going to play this week against BYU. So
BYU, since their win against Wisconsin, okay, they beat McNeese State 30-3. Congratulations. Good job. They scored 7 against Washington, scored 20 against Utah State, and I'm pretty sure 2 of those touchdowns came when the game was already out of reach. Utah State was never not going to win that football game against BYU. So I wouldn't be shocked if Hawaii wins this thing outright just because BYU can't score points, and their defense isn't that good either.
Yeah, I don't like trusting Hawaii. That's my problem with this, and I see where you're going. This could be a get-up spot for BYU after they got a pretty bad loss. They're at home. Hawaii, Hawaii, they're not that good. They like to, throw it towards the end zone quite a bit, and they'll get yards. But
that's all I need.
It's like
BYU.
I would definitely. Are you taking the points here? Or are you going with the money?
11.5. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
No, that's too many points to not take the points there, especially since it's on the road. But like I look at Utah State, they went to BYU last week and won by 25. That's crazy, man. And everything is hinging on them beating Wisconsin in Wisconsin. But what if Wisconsin's just not that good? It's everything we've been saying about the Big Ten all year. What if they're just not that good?
Yeah, it would be great to see Penn State play Michigan State, and that's one where it's like we are judging this now as Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State are just better than the rest of the Big Ten by a lot.
And
that's why I like that Penn State to cover the 13.5 so much, because they should win easily. But yeah, it's college football. We will learn. We have been wrong so many times on this podcast. But,
Well, that's why we give you the ammo you need. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to listen. You don't have to like it, but we're telling you what we're thinking, and you can say, "Wow, they're complete idiots," but at least we made you see that we were complete idiots to take the other side. But with this Hawaii one, BYU and Hawaii played last year, 30-20 final. BYU won. So I think this Hawaii team, they're not great. They're 6-1. You know what I mean? They're 6-1. They just won last week without Cole McDonald. They won without the leading passer in the NCAA. They won anyway. And I know it's Wyoming, but they won. With most teams that are Hawaii level, you take away their best player, they don't win. And their only loss was 7 points to Army. So I like this team, and I think that against BYU, they don't have a hard time.
All right. Well, that wraps up week 7. Week 7 already.
7, man. That's crazy.
It really is.
I know. College football season goes by way too fast. It just disappears.
I'm excited to see the first college football poll. I know that's not this week, but that will be, after next week. So we'll have a lot to complain about and be confused about.
Yeah, that'll be amazing. And then we have real rankings to actually worry about.
Yeah, because everyone says, the rankings don't matter. Yeah, they don't, but these other people deciding who gets in the playoffs, sharing their opinion through the first half of the season. So
exactly. No, it's absolutely true. So there you go. We'll, tell people to follow us on Twitter,
It seems like you just did, but yeah, we're at Pick'emPod on Twitter. Get an iTunes review in there too. Hit us up on iTunes. That's I think the most helpful. And of course, Canes Insight. Got to check us out there as well on their SoundCloud, on their website, on iTunes. All that stuff. Anything I missed? The YouTube channel. Yeah, you can subscribe there. That's really just so we can use this Google platform to get the audio out. But yeah, if you want to subscribe there too, that's cool.
Yeah. Give us a little love there. And we'll be back probably next week. It seems like this Wednesday thing is going to be the deal for as long as Will's on the East Coast, right?
Yeah, it's working for me. So
works pretty good. So, all right. Well, we'll see everybody next week then.